class teachers, good day to you all, and thank you for your commitment to this project. I'd like to welcome us to this lesson. This will be the last in the series of our first session of the training. You will recall that in our schedule, we did say to you that we'll be having 2 training sessions. So for the first phase of the first session, this will be the last video in the series. I am sure that we have enjoyed every bit of all that we have learned in the previous lessons. In this lesson, our focus will be on the cultural-techno-contextual approach, popularly known as CTCA. The C there is for the cultural, the T is the techno, the other C is the contextual, and the last A is for the approach. So it is CTCA, cultural, techno, contextual approach. What is this approach all about? How do we use this approach? And what are the benefits of using this approach in our classrooms? These are all that we'll be discussing in the course of this lesson. I can assure you that you're going to enjoy every bit of it. Let's go to class. Thank you.
Welcome to class. As already said in the intro video, I am Kunle Oladejo, and I'll be guiding us through this lesson. Our focus is on how to implement the cultural-techno-contextual approach in our classroom. What are our objectives for this lesson? In this lesson, we'll be discussing the essence of CTCA. We want to look at the theoretical and philosophical frameworks of CTCA, and then we'll describe with examples each of the 5 steps that you can employ in implementing CTCA in the classroom. Before we go into full discussion about CTCA, why was CTCA invented? Yes, we were colonized in Africa. Colonial masters brought the formal education to us. Through these, we inherited the foreign method of teaching in the classroom. The most commonly used is the lecture method. All other methods that have been tried out in our classroom for the purpose of teaching and learning were all foreign. However, we have our own contextual peculiarities, and it appears that not bringing our contextual peculiarities into our classroom is telling on our lesson delivery and on our students' performance. This is what research is saying, and therefore the need to see how we can contextualize science teaching. The search for methods, ways by which we can teach science in our classrooms have occupied the minds of science educators for quite a while now. One of these efforts is what led to the birth of CTCA. For short, what is CTCA all about? As I said earlier, it is the cultural-techno-contextual approach. It is an Afrocentric teaching method invented in 2015 by Peter A. Okebukola. This approach combines the power of indigenous knowledge, technology, and the environment of the student, which is the locational context where the school is located, to help to improve student performance in science and enhance meaningful learning. CTCA is so unique in the sense that it combines the power of so many teaching strategies that you can think of. So it's more or less like so many things put in one. What are the theoretical and philosophical frameworks that guides or supports the use of CTCA? Most common among them is the Vygotsky's theory of social constructivism, the Osbert theory of meaningful learning, Nkrumah's ethnophilosophy, and Edinger's technophilosophy. In implementing CTCA in the classroom, there are 3 modes to implement CTCA. It could be in the classroom, it could be on the field, or in the laboratory. Our focus in this lesson will be implementing CTCA in the classroom. There are 5 steps. In each of the modes, there are 5 steps. The step 1 of CTCA implementation in the classroom is the pre-lesson assignment. As you can see on these charts, The step 1 and the step 5 of CTCA implementation are usually outdoor learning activities, while step 2, step 3, and step 4 are in classroom learning activities. So what takes place that's the pre-lesson assignment. So in step 1, the teacher issues out, for example, say you're taking a lesson on Thursday. You can go to your class on Monday or the week before. Tell your students, oh, dear students, next week we'll be taking a lesson on motion, for example. You're going to do 2 things for me. 1, go home, browse the internet, watch YouTube videos on motion, and afterwards go to your parents or any adult around you that can help you with local knowledge, indigenous knowledge, cultural practices that explains motion. These are the 2 assignments that you want to give to your students in step 1. So step 1 is about issuing pre-lesson assignments to the students. So when the students get back to class, that is the D-Day of the lesson, you as a teacher, you introduce the topic to the students. Oh, welcome back to class, or welcome to class today. Our topic for today is motion, as I told you last week or some days back. Now, you then proceed by grouping the students, depending on the number of students you have in your class. It could be group of 5, group of 8, but not more than 10. Each group will have a group leader. What are the students supposed to do in this group? Each group with the group leader will discuss their findings. Their findings from where? The assignment to give them. The 2 assignments, the technology enhanced assignments, that is the YouTube videos they have watched, and of course the cultural knowledge, the indigenous knowledge that they found out from their parents or their elder ones at home. So these are the findings that you expect the group to discuss, and you will tell the group leaders that they have the responsibility of summarizing everything that has been said in their group, because they will be presenting to the class the findings of their group. So that is exactly what happens in step 2. So you give them about, say, 10 minutes to discuss, or depending on how you deem fit. It could be 8, it could be 10 minutes to discuss within each group, after which you call on the group leaders to come and present the findings of their group. On this slide, you see that it's a bit worded. My interest is for you to take time to read through and see how this particular lesson on this slide was implemented, and you can adopt that style. These are examples of classroom activities that we've engaged in, where students were working in groups. You can see this, the first slide up here, the second one, the students are in group, and after the group discussions, the group leaders were called upon to come and present the findings. This slide 14 is showing you an example of the summary of a particular group, what their reflections, both what they had from the internet and what they got from their parents. So this is an example of a summary group. So that is step 2. But rounding up step 2, the teacher will also need to come up with his or her own indigenous findings. You will share your own with the student. And I'll tell you something here. Why is it important for the teacher to find out cultural knowledge, indigenous knowledge that are related to the topic that you want to teach? Because it will not surprise you that you will get to the class and no student at all will have anything on indigenous knowledge. And that aspect of that approach is very important. That is the cultural part of it. So that aspect must be exercised. So therefore, it behooves you as a teacher to be prepared to class. If your students are unable to find any indigenous reference to that topic, you should be able to come up with 1 or 2 or 3 examples that explains the topic within the culture of the student. This is an example of cultural practices or activities that was used to explain set theory in one of our studies. These are other examples that we used to explain electrolysis or electrochemistry in one of our lessons. You could see up here, electropotential was explained through Ayo Olokpon and then through table tennis. You see electrolysis here being explained by the battery charger activities, and then the making of palm oil. These are further examples. So that is step 3, because in step 3, the teacher, in step 2, the student have summarized their findings, and then you have also buttressed with your own findings. So in step 3, what you do is to continue with the teaching, and as you do that, you give contextual examples within the immediate surroundings of the students that can explain the topic to the students or enhance their understanding of it. So in step 4, what do you do in step 4? You also continue with your lesson, you progress with the lesson, but not only that, you want to remind the students of the cultural practices and indigenous knowledge that has been shared in the class earlier, as you engage them in other learning activities within the topic. But not only that, we also expect that a teacher at this level or at this stage come up with some, humor, jokes, things that can lighten up the class, because students have complained that science lessons are always boring. So we don't want our lessons to be boring again. But you need to be careful here. When you're presenting the jokes or the humor, don't bring in something that is too far away from the topic. So we advise that the teacher uses content-related jokes or content-related humor. And there are lots of them online today. Say, for example, you are teaching velocity. Just go on Google and say, before your lesson, just type jokes related to velocity. You will see thousands of them, and then you can pick one or two that you think will suit your lesson, and then make use of it at step 4. That is in step 4. These are examples of the studies that we have taken. You can see the teacher furthering on explanation to the students, buttressing the points that I've made in class. This is an example of a joke that was used in one of our lessons. That is step 4. Now, step 5, which is the last step in implementing CTCA. You will recall that I said earlier that step 5 is out of classroom learning activity. So what happens there? The lesson is completed at step 4. In step 2, you have engaged the students in group activities. They have presented their findings. You have also buttressed their submissions with your own findings. In step 3, you have given contextual examples that are within the immediate surrounding of the students. That is the contextual part of that approach. So you give examples that the students can relate with within their own immediate environment. That is step 3. So in step 4, what you did was to continue with the teaching. You progress with the lesson, clearing misconceptions that the students might have had from the indigenous knowledge. Not only that, you remind them of the cultural examples that have been cited at the beginning of the lesson, and then you bring in jokes or humor that can lighten up the moods of the students and make them feel relaxed. So at step 5, you have concluded the lesson at step 4. So step 5, the students are ready to leave the class, but you tell them that they should expect a summary of the lesson, a summary of today's lesson, either on WhatsApp or on their WhatsApp group or Telegram. At the beginning of this of implementing CTCA, there were periods where we use text messages, but we found out that WhatsApp, Telegrams do better, and the students enjoy learning more on this platform than using bulk SMS. So you can create a group WhatsApp for your class and then send a summary of it, but that will be for the first lesson. This slide here shows you an example of three lessons, summary of 3 lessons that we shared with our students during one of our studies. So you can use the WhatsApp, but like I said, for the first lesson, it is the job of the teacher to send the summary of the lesson. But afterwards, you pass the baton to the group leaders. So you can appoint any of the group leaders to send the summary of the lesson after the first lesson. Much of what I've said to you from step 1 to step 5, you can find it in this text, or the CTCA text. This is a textbook that the inventor, Peter A. Bukola, wrote, and it explains the integrity, the ups and downs into details of how you can use CTCA either in the classroom, on the field, or in the laboratory. You can also visit the website www.ctcapproach.com to see more details about how to use CTCA and previous studies that have employed this approach. I've said so much about CTCA, and like I said earlier, it was invented in 2015, and since then we have had to use CTCA at different times with different topics in different places. What are our stories so far? The third stories that I want to share with you border around biology, chemistry, physics, and ICT. In 2019, I belong to a research group led by Professor Peter Okebukola, and in that group, what we did was to, survey difficult concepts that students find difficult to learn in biology, chemistry, and physics. Highlights of our findings are what you can see on the screen here. So we started by exploring each of the difficult concepts in the topmost difficult concepts in each of these subjects. In biology, these are outputs of our findings published in top-rated journals. These two studies were led by Dr. Franklin Oladejo. Today, we have had over 25 studies on biology concepts or topics. These are outputs of our findings and studies on ICT. In chemistry, you can see these are examples of our latest 3 studies, some led by Dr. Oladejo and some led by Dr. Ademola Ibukunolu. And these studies have been published in top-rated international journals. These are also our recent publications in physics. Thank God you are physics teachers, so you can see you're not left out. In physics, we have done a lot of studies, and an example of our recent study is one that you can find in this video, and of course in mathematics. That said much about that our success story. Today, we have had over 100 studies that have tried out or that have tested the efficacy of the culturo-techno-contextual approach. What are the students saying about the use of CTCA? In some of our studies, I chose to extract 3 responses from 3 different studies that students' perception about CTCA. I'd like to read out one of them. The first one says, the part of the method that I find most interesting is the indigenous part, going to find out about the cultural aspects of the topics, the local practices, particularly my findings on electroplating. It tells you that the students are also, the students are enjoying the use of this approach in learning concepts. Beyond cognitive achievements that we have published in all of these in the journals that I showed earlier, we also found out that CTCA is helping to build students beyond cognitive ability to affective ability. So that will say CTCA does not only build the brain, but also builds the mind. Like I said earlier, we have had over 100 studies that have tested the efficacy of CTCA. This pamphlet here, houses over 85 studies that we have, that we have engaged in with the use of CTCA. What are we saying? The summary of our argument is that science belongs to all. In every culture, science is embedded. In your own culture, as Yoruba, as Igbo, as Hausa, as Efik, as Egun, Yoruba is science is embedded there, and it is within this culture that you can actually get the best of science teaching and learning, and let the students also know that science is not foreign. It's within their own culture, it's within their own daily activities, and can also become great scientists like you, mommies and daddies, listening to this video or watching this video, as the case may be. So what's new about CTCA? CTCA now has an app that you can use. In the app, you find lessons that are CTCA empowered, and then cultural activities that you can also look into to teach your lessons. CTCA is now going online and blended mode. Then we're also trying to explore CTCA in the early years, the primary and classes. Future direction of CTCA. or you cannot imagine what CTCA version 1.1 will look like. Just keep salivating, and then we're trying to make some modification, particularly to step 1 and step 5, and it's going to be marvelous. That is the CTCA version 1. The summary of my discussion with you today is that CTCA can be regarded as an egalitarian pedagogy. Our findings have shown that CTCA not only helps to improve the brain, the student cognitive structure, it also helps to improve their mind, building the affective domain. And we can summarily say that CTCA can help students achieve more academic success, improve their cultural competence, and of course, enhance consciousness. In this lesson, in the last 20 minutes, what have we learned so far? We have been able to discuss the essence of the culture-techno-contextual approach, the reason why this approach was invented. It was invented to break barriers to meaningful learning in STEM subjects. We have been able to establish that. We have highlighted the theoretical and philosophical frameworks that guides the use of CTCA, and we'll also be able to describe how to implement each of the 5 steps with examples. So, what are take-home tasks? We all have our topics assigned to us. So between now and when we'll be meeting again, that is at the second session of our training, each of us will need to pick our topic or topics, identify 5 cultural reference or indigenous knowledge of practices that are related to the topics that we have been assigned to. We're going to find 5 examples around our school environment that explains that topic or concepts. And lastly, we are going to also identify 5 content specific humor. And I did say to you earlier how you can get these. Some you can coin on your own, and it's fine for you to, own your own joke or humor that explains that topic. But in the absence of anything so close, you can always get as many as you want online through Google. This is the summary of our lesson for today. I hope you make best of this discussion. Thank you, one and all. I appreciate the time that you take to watch this video. Should you have any question or comments, feel free to reach out to me or any member of the research team. Again, thank you and God bless.